We didn't kind of ran out of ideas on what to do tonight, so I threw this together. I did find a good article in one of the local magazines about scrapers. They get really technical. They even did scientific studies about what the surface of the wood looks like, and I don't really want to get into that. Where I use scrapers at, is this still too loud?
Yeah, it is.
How do we tone it down? Talk slower. For people that can't catch on. Hello, hello, hello.
That better?
That's better?
Yeah,
Better?
that's better.
I don't feel like a politician now. Scrapers are good for some plates that I make. This is a chunk of white oak that I had left over from that Lincoln project. What I've done with it, when I first start out with something small like this, with thin compared to a bowl blank, I got a hole drilled in here for the woodworm screw, and depending on how thin it is, I'll back that up with this piece of plywood. That kind of keeps it from flexing a little bit. And I've already turned the bottom on it. I got the big 100mm jaws on the chuck, and I've already flipped it over. One place where I use scrapers, this has got a lot of feather in it. And when you get the bowl gouge in there, there's no way you're going to get a clean cut on that. No way I've been able to.
Move it down towards it.
Down here?
Right there, yeah. Go rest.
This little thing here I filled in with epoxy and some kind of coloring stuff because it was cracking. But Todd had some walnut that were cut off slabs not too long ago, a year ago or so. I think Dan Chevalier ended up with a chunk of it. I ended up with some of it that had a lot of flame in it. And there's just no way that I can get a good cut without using a scraper on those things. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then I'll show you how I use them on this. I bought a few scrapers with me. Dan will talk about how he sharpens that one over there here in a minute. Your big one, big fat heavy one. This is mostly my go-to scraper here. They come from the factory. Is that better?
Yeah.
This one might have been already sort of kind of ground like that. You can get, when you look in books for tools, there's every kind of scraper you can imagine. This one here I bought was straight when I bought it, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it, so I kept grinding away till I had something that finally worked pretty good. Can you see that edge right there? Mm-hmm. I've kind of counter grounded on the back side for when you're getting into something round. And the thing about scrapers is, like any woodwork, until you buy the whole tubular, you only get to use part of it. As you're using this scraper,
That's perfect.
this is perfect, you're only going to use a little portion of this as you go around. I'll show you how I do it here in a minute. If you get too much involved, like a 1/4 inch of this blade, it's going to get real aggressive and it's going to make a lot of noise, and it's liable to make a really nasty catch on you. And those aren't very fun. When I was first learning how to hold a scraper, I wasn't doing it right, and I got a really nasty right hook, not in my jaw. I was scraping like this and I didn't have a hold of it. I had my hand on it like this, and I got a catch, and it went down like that and right into the bottom part of my jaw. This is a shear scraper. See the shavings I got coming off of there? And right now I'm just using the, shut that off so I don't get my arm caught in it. I'm just using the lower part of this wing, right in through there, just a part of it. There's a good article on shear scraping in the last journal of the American Wood Turning Association. So I'm getting a pretty good surface there.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. Speaking of the new members, you can get the AAW for half price if you go ahead and try to sign up, get signed up now. That still continues.
Did they put a deadline on that?
There's a deadline, I think it's the end of July.
Really good organization if you want to be able to find out a lot of stuff. So anyway, when I'm shear scraping with this one right this second, I've kind of got the handle down in here to my hip, and I've got the blade almost closed. You got to be careful because if you engage both these lips, it's going to get nasty. So I'm just cutting on this lower one. Can you see that?
Yeah.
I'm cutting on this lower one. This one here is probably an 1/8 of an inch off the surface. And I'm not taking a real heavy cut. It's more like a finishing cut. Kind of see how fine a shavings I'm getting there. So that's with a bowl gouge. These other scrapers, we're going to talk about sharpening them for a second. Two things. When you're sharpening this whole bevel right here is going up against the grinding wheel. And you notice some of them are kind of counter ground. That's just material that's just in your way. So I just grind it back just to get it out of the way. It's going to put a burr out here on the end. You can actually feel it. Most of the stuff I use is right off the grinder. There's a real small burl, and that's what's doing your cutting. You're not even going to be touching this edge to the wood. I don't even know if you're seeing what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're not touching this like you do with the bowl gouge. In fact, when I was using that bowl gouge, I was not rubbing the bevel. I was just using that wing versus trying to actually cut out the center of this bowl. I'm just going to do some on the outside because two reasons. I'm going to leave this on the chuck so I can finish it when I get home. I don't have time to turn, so I got to do it here. You want to make sure your rest is good and clean. You want to make sure it's a good distance away. One of the reasons, it depends on how this is ground back here. Like this one here, it's messed me up a time or two because you forget that this is counter ground back in here. And when you're doing it on the rest, sometimes if you're coming in out of a bowl, you'll get into that part there and there's nothing to support it. So you just got to kind of keep in mind how that's ground. This is my go-to one most of the time. It's got a nice round edge here. This is still pretty square. The round edge is so if you wanted to shear scrape, you don't have an edge that you're going to hit. It'll swivel for you. Most of the scraping action is done right at the center of the piece of wood. So your rest height, now Dan's big fat scraper over there, I'd have to have this rest lower because of the thickness of the blade. So anyway, this is, maybe you want to tilt it up just a little bit. I usually run a lot right on the level.
What happens if you cut up the butt center?
Well, it's liable to rub that bevel and knock it right out of the lathe, I would imagine. I haven't tried that yet. That's on my list of things to do.
I asked that question because when I was trying to use the scraper, I kept wanting to push the handle down. Because almost all your other tools, you want the handle down and the steel up. Not so on a scraper. You do not want to keep pushing the handle down. Because before you know it, the tip will be up above center. Then go boom!
Yeah. And you're liable to get leverage on it like that, and when it gets caught like that, it wants to go like that, and it wants to push down from the force of the wood. Yeah. And that's what, I think what I was doing, the other last couple lays I've got, you can swivel the head. So I can bring it around here just off center, maybe 20 degrees or whatever, to where I can get in there and see what I'm doing. But the time when I got my lights knocked out, I was way off center here, and I think it was a kind of a deep bowl, maybe like a 4-inch deep bowl. And I couldn't see what I was doing, and I was doing this, and it caught and just clocked me.
Tom, you can slide that headstock to the end, then you stand on the end, stand off the
Well,
end.
it could, but all this shit's in the way, so.
Well, it is now. You know who put it away?
We're probably Todd. Probably knew I was gonna need the end of it, and he decided to. I like my golf towel, Todd. The arch enemy. I work for a welding products company, and air gas is our competition, so I got a golf towel for him one time. Anyway, we're gonna see what this fella here does, if I can find it. I'm gonna set this right about center. It's maybe tilting down a little bit. And I'm just gonna kind of work on this edge out here. Now my lathe, I stand a little higher so that I can really get this into my side. And I'm gonna move my body. I'm not really gonna hardly move my arms at all. That's why you need to make sure you take it's echoing. Take something like a Scotch-Brite or something and make sure this is clean. Maybe wax it or something.
File it,
How?
file it,
Well, if you have to.
if you can.
If you've got any nicks at all in there, you really want to get the nicks out. Because you want to have a nice, smooth transition. And we've all probably figured out if you've got a nick in your wrist, it'll really magnify something that you're trying to turn.
Is that when you signed up, Tom?
No, this is practically brand new.
That's what I thought.
This is the one the guy at Robust really gave us a good deal on them when we were down there in Waco. Because it was for the club. Now what normally if I was going to finish this off, I'd have had this turned all the way down in here to where, you know, I was kind of, it's a finishing cut. You're not really going to remove a lot of stock. So since this is a demo, I'm just showing you kind of how I use them. That's how, this started out about as thick as that, maybe a little thinner. This was a weird piece to turn because all this feathering and this big huge knot, every time I turned off my lathe, it swung like this until the weight got to the bottom of it. And I never did get it to settle down worth a damn. I just managed to get it down enough to where I could sand it all off. One of the reasons I'm going to put the shield on is because you usually end up with a face full of shavings when you do this. So let's find out. I'm going to tuck this into my side. And I'm going to try to get my feet about even with my shoulders. And I'm just going to kind of do real gentle. Now you know why you need a shield. And don't forget to zip your smock up either. Just kind of barely get in there and feel it. When you forget to do that, put your shield down and really let you know. Now I was just using, you can see probably where the shaving was coming off. Right about there. And if you're doing a curve, and I'll let you guys get a feel for this finish. It's not, you you'd have to start out at maybe 150 sanding it, something like that. If you've got a curvature, you can always start out kind of like this and follow it around. And I just followed it around the edge there, just using maybe 1/8 of an inch of the blade as I went. That would be if this had a curvature to it. It's pretty flat right now. I just got it tighter in my body and I'm just pulling back on it. And I'm starting to lose my barrel. So don't be afraid to go back to the grinder. This is kind of losing it. Like I say, I do mine right off the grinder. The burr is basically just a little bitty piece of metal that's bent up over the top like a fish hook over the main piece of the steel. It's a real thin, wiry edge. And that's why as you use it, it bends it down and it's gone. I want to try Dan's scraper here, see if I
I hope
can.
that's a good enough burr.
Well, I mean, we all know if it ain't, it ain't.
If you stick
I've never
that-
used anything this humongous.
If you stick that tool in a vise, you can make a better burr by hand.
Yeah. Right.
It's not bad at all, is it?
That's what happens when you don't have a barrel on it. No.
I think I messed the burr up.
Yeah. Well, that was an experiment.
Well, that's a good example of why you need the burr.
Yes. I'm not sure how this one is. This one doesn't feel that great. Well, we got to readjust the rest here. Stay. That's not too bad. Yikes. I'm putting pressure down on the tool rest. That's where my pressure is going. I'm barely touching the wood. You can shear scrape by holding it at an angle. If I had a better light, you could probably tell more how the kind of cut I'm getting, but anyway, that's a general idea.